Some financial advisors say millennials will have to work 7 years longer than their parents, or save twice as much as mom and dad to enjoy similar retirements. With student loan debt, Hawaii's high cost of living, stagnant wages, and not to mention all the talk in Washington about major changes to Medicare and Social Security, many millennials in Hawaii and around the country are left to wonder about their retirement readiness. This live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise. We tend to think of millennials, the generation born between 1980 and the early 2000s, as perhaps not as driven as their baby boomer counterparts. When it comes to money, they're making less of it, and their net wealth is about half that of boomers when they were the same age. However, on average, millennials are actually saving more for their retirement. Given the high cost of living in Hawaii, what's the economic outlook for millennials here? Two millennials are here to share their challenges and concerns. Joining them is a wealth manager and the Hawaii State Director of the American Association of Retired Persons. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org. Now to our guest. Makoa Santorini is a 25-year-old who completed his bachelor's in economics from the University of Southern California in 2015. He currently works as a systems administrator and marketing technologist for Dawson Technical and Dawson Group. Keopa Relitz is a 32-year-old who lives in Makiki. She holds a law degree from the University of Arizona Roger College of Law. Ms. Relitz and her husband, who have been married for 3 years, welcomed their first child in August of last year. She currently works as a communications professional with the state of Hawaii. Barbara Kim Stanton has been the Hawaii State Director of the American Association of Retired Persons since 2005. AARP is a membership organization for people age 50 and over with about 150,000 members in Hawaii and 38 million nationally. AARP advocates and provides information on issues that matter to our kupuna and their families. And Vernon Wong is Senior Vice President and Manager in First Hawaiian Bank's Wealth Management Group. He has over 32 years of experience in financial services and advising Hawaii families about how to achieve their lifetime financial goals. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Let's dive right into it. Barbara, I want to start with you and that statistic off the top. Working 7 years longer than their parents or having to save twice as much as mom and dad to enjoy a similar retirement. What is the outlook for millennials from where you're standing?
Well, I think millennials have a really bright future because what we find is millennials think more about saving. And I think it's because that they've seen their parents go through the recession of 2008 and they know what that has been like, and they could see how, in a very short span of time, you could lose 1/3 of your savings. And it must have made quite of an impression because you see them thinking about savings more, although they're not saving as much. And I think part of that has to do with the rising cost of living.
Right, that the initiative is there to save, but perhaps the dollars just are not.
Yes.
I see you nodding your head.
Yes.
Tell me about that. What are you hearing, between you and your husband and also among your peers? Do you find that there is more of an investment in savings or when you think of millennials, a lot of folks think that this is a generation that lives with their family, is constantly on social media, perhaps not as invested in that, but the statistics show something else.
So one thing that I find, or I agree with very significantly, is that I not only had to watch my parents go through the recession, but I was in law school, I was in grad school when the recession hit. So I saw how quickly people's job offers got taken away. I saw what my prospects were going to be like. And so that, I think, has contributed significantly, at least to our family, my husband and I, looking into making sure that we're not spending more than we have, spending more than we're making, and then also looking forward to how are we going to save and what are we going to invest in so that we can have something for our next generation, for our son.
Tell me about that, Vernon. Are you seeing this generation perhaps less reliant on credit, let's say?
Yeah, well, they actually have a lot of challenges, but I have two millennials as children, my wife and I, 17 and 20, so they're on the younger side of it. But, I think retirement, I wish I were a millennial because they're going to live a lot longer than me, you know. So I think when you think about retirement, they're going to have to, if they retire in their 60s or maybe even work to their 70s, they can live another 30 years or so. But retirement's not the only thing that they're thinking about, right? Buying a home in Hawaii, maybe saving for education for newborns, maybe getting married, you know, that costs money as well. And some of them have student loans that they need to take care of, and credit card debt, you know, as you mentioned. So all these things can, you know, they can work with. It's just that you have to kind of understand what your goals and what your priorities are, you know, what your resources are, instead of, you know, in terms of income and benefits from work and maybe even family, and do the best that you can to, you know, just plug away. Yeah.
Makoa, let's get to you. I know savings is a huge priority for you. How much of that is influenced by having witnessed the recession, as Barbara mentioned?
I wouldn't say so much of it is influenced by recession. It's more influenced by aspirations. But I think largely what you said is we're seeing a lot of technology. So it's, you know, in our generation, we're seeing younger people get startups and have much greater success, whereas before that wasn't as more accessible to us. You know, you couldn't go online and see that, oh, someone just made a public company and did this and that. And so it kind of set the bar higher for us. Whereas, you know, where it could be in the past, it was, oh, we live on the street and I only know the success down the road. And that's sort of my ceiling and my floor.
Right. No, I see what you're saying, that the world is so wide. Speaking of which, we want to invite our viewers to join in this discussion, both here in Hawaii and around the world. I thought that this one was particularly interesting. Gerald on Twitter says, the challenge is that wages that don't adjust to the cost of living keeps us from having enough to contribute the amount we should be saving. This is one of the reasons I left Hawaii for Chicago. Higher wages, lower taxes, and the cost of living means more left to save. Are we seeing that they're being able to put away enough to save for the future?
Yeah, it's challenging with all, you know, the cost of living in Hawaii is so high. I think the best way to save, though, if you do it through an employer plan or an automatic, you know, many employers offer a retirement plan, whether it's a 401k that it's automatic deduction, and I think the best way for anyone to save if it's automatic, you know, whether it's through payroll deduction or through automatic savings, go to an investment, because for many people, if they wait till the end of the month to save, there's nothing left, right? And so it's a matter of understanding their budget, knowing where their money is going. A lot of expenses go to lifestyle, right? And that's a choice. So it's a matter of being smart and systematic saving. I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah.
Barbara, what are you seeing on being, from your perspective? Obviously, you're representing the boomers who have gone through this process. What are the lessons that we can learn from them?
Well, I totally agree with Vernon. I think what you have to do to encourage saving is to have access to some kind of payroll deduction plan. And that's why we strongly encourage people to pay themselves first. Nobody's going to pay you in old age. You have to pay yourself first and get used to this like a habit. And as soon as you get used to paying yourself first, automatic payroll deduction, after a while, you know, you'd be surprised just saving a few dollars every paycheck, how it adds up with compound interest. And that's why we feel so strongly that we need to do something to set up some kind of mechanism, financial mechanism, so people can have access to payroll deduction savings to just automatically be able to say, okay, a certain percentage of my every paycheck will go in. And at first, you think it's hard, and it may be, but as wages go up, you'll find that your money will be working for you. So absolutely, payroll deduction, that is the way to go through an employer.
And that can be very difficult if you work perhaps for a small company or a company that doesn't offer that, to have the incentive and the wherewithal to actually set that up for yourself.
Well, yes, because actually in Hawaii, we have 216,000 people who don't have access to payroll savings. And of the 216,000, 99,000 are millennials. And so we're talking about a big chunk of this, almost half of the people without access to payroll savings. being millennials, and they really need to have some way to save money because, you know, after what you have is a lot of competing interests. And so what you do is you save money first, and then you look at what's left, and then you make your choices about housing, transportation, etc. And then you may find that you better start bringing home lunch. But that's not a bad thing. That is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That kind of discipline, though, can be difficult. What do you hear from your peers in all of this? I know that given that you work for the state, there is that kind of mechanism in place, but are you hearing from your peers that they are able to save?
I think a lot of my peers and perhaps the circles that I socialize with, a lot of us are in public service. So I think it can be very difficult to save. And when we do save, it seems kind of like sometimes pennies on the dollar, right? So I think most of the folks that I talk to, one of their aspirations might be to own a home, right? And to that extent, we have to be able to save money toward a down payment and the ability to get used to paying a mortgage of that level. But as far as savings, I don't think we actually talk that much about it. And I think some of it has to do with that we're doing our best, and a lot of times it's pretty incremental.
Right, just to keep your head above water. When we think about creating those kind of accounts, you don't necessarily need to have a lot of money to do something like that, right?
Not at all, you know, and if your employer offers a savings plan, that's great. But even for those who don't, you could set it up on your own. You know, if your paycheck goes to your checking account or savings account, every month you can do an automatic, you know, transfer to either retirement plan or a down payment, you know, bucket. And if you have goals and you know the time frames and you just know your income, and it depends how important that goal is for you. And then, you know, then maybe the reason why you want to accomplish that goal gives you some motivation or discipline to just say, hey, that's important enough that I'll give up a little bit on going out or, you know, some of the lifestyle expenses people enjoy. It's not that you can't do that, but if it's automatic, as Barbara said, you pay yourself first. And the first month or two, you may miss it, but after, you know, 3-4 years from now, you're going to look and you're going to say, I'm so happy I did that.
Right, right.
Well, you
And
know,
years from now, too.
you know, one of the things is, yes, you can take that extra step if it's not there. But what we have found is that if your employer has some kind of payroll savings plan to help you invest, save for the future, you're 15 times more likely to save. That's a huge number.
Right.
So, I mean, anytime you remove any obstacle, you make it easier to save. And that's why we think for the future, you really have to have some kind of way to save, because it is not just Social Security, and it's just not pensions, which, you know, rapidly are going away, but you're also looking at investments and savings. And so each bucket has to be full in order for you to have financial security.
Absolutely. Let's take a snapshot of who we're talking about here in Hawaii. We have some graphics we want to go to. When it comes to marital status of millennials, and in this case we're putting that at ages 25 to 34, the majority in this class are married, after that single. And let's talk about children as well. 59% there with no children. So we're talking about you know, a good number of these folks who are dual income, no kids. Great time to save.
Right.
Vernon, talk about that.
Absolutely. And maybe they are delaying having kids because they know the cost of having a child. I think I heard a statistic that raising a child up to their age 18, maybe $250,000. And that's not including college education as well. So I can see why people are delaying that. But it's important that if you do have disposable income, you know, and it's important to know what you want to be, what your future is like. You know, do you want the goals that you have, whether it's buying a home or having children? All these things are really important, and having some structure or some discipline around a plan to really accomplish that goal. I think that's really important.
Yeah, Keopu and I are both new moms, so that statistic's definitely close to home. But we have a question for our millennials from a viewer that says, what type of preparation did you receive from your high school classes regarding finance and retirement? Now, you both are graduates of the same school, but we'll start with you.
I actually took economics and finance-related courses. So all my education was directly related on how to grow your net worth and financial planning in the future.
Do you feel like high school, were they already talking about that at that level?
Yes, they will. I mean, well, I was fortunate enough to be inspired to pursue economics in high school. And I loved it so much that I continued on it through college. But one of the fundamental features of economics is savings and the importance of savings. But that being said, I can understand how it might be difficult for millennials to be incentivized to save, especially with, lifestyle changes. And so, I mean, it was a pretty integral part of my life, though, so I did benefit in that way.
Because it's sparking your own interest,
Yeah.
right? So that speaks to you. And then obviously you're a planner, you're a saver, and
Yeah.
you're the exception, perhaps not the rule. Barbara's shaking her head here.
You have no idea how exceptional he is if he's saving 70%. I think you're the only person I've ever met who's a millennial who's saving 70%.
That's commendable.
Well,
Yeah. That's terrific.
not to digress too much, but I think putting a little bit aside every month or every period is really important, and we don't learn that in a millennial age because, I mean, a pension plan or any type of defined benefit teaches you how to save. I mean, whether or not you want to or not, some of it's being saved. And my generation doesn't have any incentive to save. In the 80s, you could get savings rates, treasury bills that are 14%. Now we're lucky if you get 3 or 4% from a bank because interest rates are so low right now. So, I mean, you still have to, I have to force myself to put money aside, even though I could be like, oh, this is going to be great at Ala Moana this weekend.
Yeah.
And the other part of that also is that there's so much job switching as well, right? That you don't necessarily stay with a company for 30, 40 years and have a pension plan and rely on that. You hop around from company to company. Some has a 401k, maybe something doesn't. And so it's not as integrated into our work style anymore.
Yeah, but that should change because, besides having an employer who has some kind of payroll deduction plan, AARP also thinks it should be portable. So, because the millennials jump around from job to job. I mean, in the old days, it was you stay there 25, 30, 35 years. But the millennials, they keep jumping. And what we would want to see is something that's portable so that if they change jobs, that they still can do payroll deduction into their 401ks, their IRAs.
So that the money goes with that.
Yes, that only encourages them to save more for their future.
Kiyupa, what about you? Do you feel like the financial education started early for you? We should say full disclosure, these are both Kamehameha graduates.
Yeah, and sorry, but I didn't get it. But I didn't take an interest. I had an interest in politics and early years in science, so I didn't really have a ton. I got a lot of the education from my parents, right? And so my parents really instilled in me an understanding that you should earn the money that you need to go to school, that you should make sure that you're helping contribute to it, whether it's to have a job or to take your studies seriously so that you can get a scholarship and use that as essentially as a job. But as far as I was not fortunate enough to have that kind of interest like Makua, so I was more interested in politics and English and creative things.
Well, and sticking with education, let's go to some other numbers here tonight. When we're talking about this particular age group, the vast majority are college graduates, and that, of course, a double-edged sword because with that college degree can often come a vast amount of debt. When we look at their occupations here in Hawaii, 40%. White collar, manager, professor. We're talking about folks. When you look at these statistics, blue collar as well or clerical. Those are all jobs that are steady. They pay well. Only 6% unemployed. So pretty good numbers there. But of course, Vernon, having a large student loan can definitely hinder your savings.
It certainly can. But the millennials is, as a whole, is very, very highly educated, and that's great. But I think, with that, as you mentioned, there's some loans to take care of. And it's just a matter of knowing your budget and knowing how much you should carve out for paying that loan back and then for the other goals that you have for raising a child, for buying a home and retirement, of course. And I think financial education, as you were referring to, is very, very important. And it's not limited to in school. I mean, in school, everyone's working so hard to get their degree. But even employers should offer that for their younger employees and provide financial education. You know, their employees are so important to them, but help them to understand the importance of savings and how to allocate their resources to the goals that they have. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go to another viewer question. This one says, Barbara said the millennials were influenced by recession and their parents' practices to guide their own money matters. However, with the influence of social media and celebrities flaunting their wealth, don't millennials think that saving isn't an issue? I mean, you referenced earlier, you know, seeing, you know, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, the folks who started Instagram, whatnot, you know, people in their 20s becoming billionaires overnight. How much does that influence aspirations, do you think?
Substantially. Yeah. But that's, you know, it's a matter of your own purview. Are you going to measure yourself to the billionaire, or are you going to measure yourself to an average? You know, if you're not doing as well as a billionaire, are you still okay? Or if you're doing better than average or near average, are you okay? So, I mean, like, you know, because it's available on social media and it's so right in front of our faces and a part of our daily lives, I think that drives a lot of people. But that also, you know, that may be a testament to the fact of why millennials are saving so much, even though maybe they don't have the right savings education or it's not integrally a part of their education and their upbringing.
Yeah, what do you think about that? You know, seeing your peers, you know, does social media have an influence on how you live your life and that of your friends?
I certainly don't think I'm going to be Mark Zuckerberg. I've let that go, so maybe but maybe it's because we have been in social media. I mean, social media, Facebook, I'm the older millennial generation. Facebook came around when I was in college, right? So I didn't grow up with social media, but so I didn't see social media as being something that was flaunting more than it was just an everyday course of interactions. So I think I don't know that it's shifted much more than, say, walking around the halls and seeing your friends, certain friends with certain types of cars or whatnot. So I don't know that I could say that it changes how I've viewed savings or how my friends have viewed savings or even how we talk about it. If anything else, maybe we're talking about it more because we have the avenues to say, hey, you know, I really wanted to do this, but, you know, here's my venting, here's what I have to do, home lunch me, and we can use it to, you know, I know it sounds silly, but, you know, we can use it as an interactive and to connect with people in those kinds of ways that it's not necessarily, it's just a regular course of interaction that you might have had on the street 20 years ago.
Right, that is interesting. We have another one here. In Hawaii's economy with multiple generations living under one roof, are millennials really prepared for savings and retirement? I wonder how much millennials are a burden to the Gen Xers and the baby boomers, and you must interact with this, you know, because we do have so many multi-generational families in Hawaii. Yeah. How does that impact the folks who are trying to retire right now?
Well, we don't think they're burdens. I'll tell you that. And you know, you're right. In Hawaii, we have the highest percentage of intergenerational families. But I think that, you know, every generation in Hawaii, they want every other generation to do well. We're always looking at when you look at the sacrifices of the generations that came before us, they did a lot of sacrifice, whether you're talking about the 442nd or you're talking about the plantation workers. All you want is the next generation to do well. And that's why for our group, because ARP is for the 50 and older, we really want the millennials to do well. We want the Gen Xers to do well. And that's why we're pushing so hard for some kind of work and save program, because we know that if you start early, you have a real chance to have the kind of financial security that will change your life forever as you get older. And that's the kind of thing that we want. And we say, you start now, just think, and you know this because you're in financial kind of things, but that compound interest will make such a difference. And so for the ARP people, we're reaching out and we're saying, we have classes on financial management. We say, mothers, bring your daughters to class because we want them to have the financial independence and
Right.
choices.
The financial literacy is so
Yes.
key. And talking about compounded interest on the other side, a viewer writes in, comment, never pay interest on credit card debt, and wants to know, does anyone on this panel carry credit card debt? That's kind of a personal question. But Vernon, I wonder if you've
Right.
seen sort of people going the other way, using more cash. Millennials are said to use more cash, more debit, less credit.
Yeah, we see that, and it's important. The credit card debt, it's the highest interest. So if you can, again, if you are using a credit card, maybe it's to establish credit. If you want to get a house or you want to borrow money later, that's a good way to do it. But you don't want to have a high balance on a very high interest rate. So again, and some people use credit cards for points. Right, but it's good if you can automatically pay that balance off on a systematic basis and not spend more than you make. But we do see a trend that credit is one thing, but as you mentioned, a lot of millennials are using debit cards or just cash because they know the credit card interest is pretty high. But sometimes if someone wants to establish credit, maybe that's the first step in doing that, as long as you pay it off. As long as you pay it off.
And Keopu, I see you nodding your head. I know that you say that for you and your husband, it is a priority to not carry that kind of debt.
It is a priority. It's one thing that we kind of came together very early in our relationship to make sure that we weren't carrying on that kind of debt. And even to the extent of, how can we get this car payment down as quickly as possible?
Right.
For us, that means that it frees up more money to do things that we want to do, but also to save, right? So how do we be realistic? And the realistic way, I think, for us, strategically at least, to save is how do we reduce the monthly payments that we're doing. So we talked about I don't pay for cable TV. We have subscription-based services that we share with families because a lot of them have family memberships. So any way that we can keep those monthly payments down increases our likelihood to save.
What do you think about credit? Do you find a lot of people using credit cards, or are you seeing more and more of your friends and peers using cash and debit?
Most of my peers use credit cards because I'd say just recently there's been a lot of incentives to get this card and you can get 100,000 points if you spend this much. Personally, I actually started late. Most of my friends started pre-college, and so they've been building their credit scores. So I started late, and because I started late, it took me forever to find someone that would commit to me and extend me a line of credit. And when I finally did, it was embarrassingly low. It was like $500 line of credit. But that actually worked to my benefit because that set, I can only spend this much money, and I've kind of maintained that for a while. And now that I've had it for a couple of years, I've really built kind of an exceptional credit score, which has allowed me to reach out to superior credit cards. So credit's pretty big in my generation.
Yeah, and we really encourage people to use credit cards and not debit cards because if you lose your identity, you have identity theft. I mean, you're protected with the credit card, not the debit card. And the other thing is what we encourage people to do is if they have a credit card balance, you don't have to pay off the entire balance, but what you should pay off is your entire statement amount so that you don't have to pay interest. And you can do that automatically. Most of the credit cards have a feature online payment that says, every month you're going to pay off your statement balance, and that will keep you from having to pay interest. So we always say, do something so that you're not going to be paying the interest.
But automated.
Right, but more likely than a credit card, huge credit card debt, what we're finding is that a lot of people are carrying college loans. I mean, the average is about $110,000 over their lifetime, and that's a substantial amount of money.
If you're carrying that kind of a loan and you're trying to save for retirement and you perhaps want to buy a house, I mean, how does that all play together?
Oh boy, it's priorities, and you can allocate some to each one, and it's really just a matter of what's most important. And so I guess everyone is different, and you just have to, again, really understand your cash flow, what your income sources are, and where your money is going, and what your obligations are, and then what your goals and aspirations are. So it's laying out a good plan and using the resources you have and or family, and really just allocating accordingly and just monitoring that on a regular basis. I think that's the best way to do it.
Of course, a lot of people want to improve these scores and pay down the debt so that they can buy a home. Let's go to our primary residence slide now. This is interesting. In that group that we were talking about, the 25 to 34-year-olds in Hawaii, 15% own a home, which is actually, given that age group, I found pretty high. Renting, 27%, 18% living with their parents. Then the next one is owning a townhouse or condo. So actually, if you put those two together, the ownership is 30%, over 30%.
Right.
That seems pretty promising. But the next slide, how many plan to buy or sell in the next 12 months? 98% say no. So just 2% trying to make that move. We are dealing with an exceptional real estate market here in Hawaii. I know both of you know this. You know, the prospect of being able to buy a home, how likely is that given your age and you know, the cost of buying a house here?
So my husband and I talked about when we entered our 30s, you know, what are some of the things that we should have done in our 20s? What are the things that we want to do for our 30s? And one of the goals I said was that I wanted us to own a house by the time we were 40, which seems it just seems odd to be saying, well, yes, by the time I'm 40, we want to own a house. The reality is that we are trying to be realistic that when we buy, we want to stay in the house for a long time. We don't want to just turn over a house. We want something that we can also pass on to our child, you know, those kinds of things. And when we actually sat down and went through the numbers like you're suggesting and monitored everything, 8 years seemed like a reasonable amount of time to be able to travel. Was another thing that we wanted to do more in our 20s, to travel and to save, as well as continue paying our regular bills every month.
How important do you think it is to own a home?
I think it's a luxury, but just going back to our social media and our influences, that it's kind of, people think of it as a necessity. You know, it's I think it's another form of savings. Some people might think otherwise, given what just happened not nearly 10 years ago.
Right.
But it really is, you know, it's a real asset. So from that perspective, if you own a home, the only thing it could do, hopefully, is go up. And in the state of Hawaii, we've noticed that we have a pretty stable growth rate of our homes. So I think the confidence in housing is pretty good and it's important, but it's not necessarily a necessity.
Interesting. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of people would love to own a home in Hawaii. I think the challenging thing is getting the down payment.
Yep.
Of course, you know, you're going to have to be able to have the cash flow for the monthly mortgage, but for most traditional lenders, it's 20% down. I'm sure you can get less, but it would cost a little bit more. And, you know, I think the average condo in Hawaii is a little over $400,000. And the average single home family residence is a little over $700,000 for median. And so, you know, let's say you have a $500,000 property, and you put down $100,000. You have to find ways to get that.
And getting that 100,000 that's a pretty big mountain to climb.
Yeah.
Right.
And so whether it's be family gifting or using your savings, it's just a matter, or if it's an 8-year goal, maybe that's manageable. But it's something that, you know, real estate is a good, you know, hard asset for an investment. I mean, it's highly, you could use leverage as well. So in other words, if you get a $500,000 property, you're borrowing $400,000. And let's say 10 years from now, it doubles in value. That's not, I mean, it's no guarantee, but that's not unreasonable. Off a $100,000 investment, you made $500,000, right? So only real estate is something that you can highly leverage. You know, 80% you could borrow, but it's something that, you know, it'd have to be a long-term thing and not move around so much on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a thought.
I mean, Barbara, what do you see in the seniors that you deal with, those who own those who decided to buy homes and those who didn't? The outcomes, I would imagine, are very different.
Well, I think for the seniors, the most common thing I hear is buy a home because otherwise you're paying for somebody else's mortgage. I do hear that. And I think that when the seniors were younger and they were, you know, your age and you're looking at trying to buy a home, I mean, it wasn't so hard to get to. So you're just looking at the amount of money needed, whether it's $400,000 for a condo or $700,000 for a home, that's a staggering amount of money to try and save. The reach wasn't so great between your salary and a home for the seniors. And so I think the way that a lot of our seniors look at money, at homes, is that it's a good thing to do because you're going to have to live somewhere, and you might as well build your equity. And you can always, you know, in Hawaii, the common thing is people believe the home investment will always go up. That is not always true. You could buy on the high end and then it crashes. But generally speaking, with the limited land in Hawaii, you find that most home values go up.
Over time, definitely. Makoa, this is a good one for you. You talked about this whole idea of having wider floors and ceilings because of social media. And the viewer asked, do you think millennials don't save because they believe they will be ultra successful at an early age? Do you find that there's a lot of folks who want to, you know, have an IPO and become a billionaire tomorrow?
No, definitely. I think that's whether or not it's very common to see in college graduates, because you just finished your degree and now you're prideful, like, I'm going to take the world and just take it by storm. You also see it at, well, sorry, just lost my train of thought.
No, not at all. I mean, just this idea that, you know, you see people like the Zuckerbergs of the world, you know, making all this money in an instant. And so you think like, I don't really need to do home lunch because I'm going to be a billionaire someday.
So it's sort of, you know, younger people are becoming richer at a much earlier age. And it's sort of this technology bubble that's been happening where, you know, a few lines of code can make you a billionaire, and that can become a public company. Whereas prior generations, your baby boomers and your Gen X's, they were always built on the premise of hard work will get you this recipe to $1 million, right? This is the recipe to becoming a millionaire. Now that the gold standard is a billionaire, like, you know, and it's not just, I don't need to work hard to get there, it's just gonna fall into my lap.
Right, right. So how do we make sure, you know, not everybody's gonna be a billionaire. That's sounds like a great path.
Yeah, I was thinking
so how do we, you know, if you're not invested in that hard work track, what's, you know, the outcome seems like it could be pretty bleak.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm saying most people are going to be disappointed. But you know, it's going back. I said it earlier. It's if you're going to compare yourself to, is the $1 billion, you know, your measure of success, or is the average your measure of success? And you know, it's you determine your own level of happiness.
You could have a lot of disappointed hearts out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is interesting. The caller wants folks to appreciate how hard it is to put something aside when on minimum wage and working two jobs. The caller's now 85, and the little she put aside at millennial age is now making a difference in her life. This is Rosemary writing in from Liliha, and we appreciate you writing in tonight, Rosemary. A good thing to remember that you don't necessarily need to be on the billionaire track to save money.
Right.
No,
Right.
you know what I love about these young people, these youngsters? I love the fact that they are aspirational. That, you know, in trying to save for a home or looking at, you know, the kind of lifestyle you want, that is a good thing because it makes you plan for the future. But what we look at also is things happen in life, and as you go up and down, what we get concerned about is having a safety net for everybody. So as you're going soaring off, that's a good thing. You're soaring up, but we want you to have a parachute too. And that's why, you know, ARP always looks at making sure Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all the safety net programs are strengthened. Because should you have one of those life's unfortunate downturns, then you won't crash and burn. You will be able to have something where you can live with dignity, where you have food, where you have shelter. So I do think it's great to be aspirational, but we have to be very careful to make sure we preserve these bedrock safety programs.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into our next slide, and that's looking at the financial services that are being used by this age group. 42% in a 401k, 25% using an IRA or a Roth IRA, 21% investing in stocks, and then also more in mutual funds, bonds, money markets, CDs. CDs, of course, as Makoa mentioned, not really giving much of a return on investment. And then 23% just dealing with paying off their own personal loans right now. So you still have a healthy amount of people who are not necessarily putting anything away, but just trying to pay down what they already owe. That 42% at a 401k, when we look at baby boomers, for instance, what's the analogous number? I mean, were they investing much more heavily in that, or are we on the right track with these numbers?
I think the 401k really reflects how easy it is to save through payroll deduction in a 401k. Because what you find the 401k is in the private sector. In the public sector, you have the deferred comp. The state and county, they don't have the 401k. So this is a number that I think you see high because of what's offered in the private sector primarily.
And this question leads into that. Susan from Molokai writing in, what good plans are in place to help millennials save, such as My IRA, My Individual Retirement Account? Are any of these plans being threatened by the new administration? Well, let's take the first part of that question for you, and then I think Barbara can probably speak to the second. What are some good plans in place? And let's say that you are, just an average wage worker, not necessarily on the billionaire track here.
Of course. Well, if your employer offers a 401k, that's great because there's some tax benefits, and many employers do some matching programs for that. And so I would recommend anyone who participates at least do what the employer matching is and more. But there's IRAs, there's Roth IRAs that someone could contribute $5,500 a year. If you're over age 50, you could do a little more. But that's really important as well. But just so there's a lot of different savings programs. These are designed for retirement though, and so it should be set aside for at least your age 59 and a half or beyond. There's some penalties to take it out earlier than that, and so it depends on the time frame of the goal. If someone wanted to buy a home or college education, maybe the retirement plan is not the best vehicle, and so they have different buckets for short-term money, mid-term money, and long-term money. And I think it's good to set up your portfolio that way.
And I think there are some folks out there who think, well, I'm not making enough money to save.
Right.
I don't want to necessarily show my financials to the bank because they're not necessarily as impressive as I would like them to be. But I would guess that you would discourage that kind of thinking.
Of course. Whatever someone has, that's what they have. And it's important to them. And whatever lifestyle they have, it's just a matter of looking whatever their resources are and making the best out of it. Regardless of what someone's income is and assets are, it's their money, it's important. And so there's always could be some ways to set aside for whatever their future plans are, regardless of what their size is, absolutely.
To the caller's second point, and Barbara, I know that you've been advocating for the states setting up something to make retirement plans a little bit easier. I know California and a number of other states have that in place, but those are now definitely under threat by the new administration. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, there's yesterday there was a vote in the Senate, and unfortunately it passed. And what it did was it was something that muddied the waters as to whether states could easily set up some kind of payroll deduction program. It didn't prohibit it. It's just that in the past it was something that was affirmed in law or in executive order, and now they're saying, now what they said is, well, we're not saying you have the absolute right, but neither did it prohibit it. All it did is it had a chilling effect to say, just step back a little. And so we think that was just the wrong action, because what we really need to do is to help people save. Like we said, we find that when people have some kind of payroll mechanism through work, they can save 15 times more. I mean, that is just a known fact. And so that really, I think that even though this happened, we're going to continue. ARP is going to work with the private sector, representatives from the state, and to see what can be done to set a mechanism up so that there's a way for financial security, there's a way to grow wealth. Having said that, the other thing that I think people really need to be looking at is the vote that happened today in the House, where there was that vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act, sometimes called Obamacare. Because no matter what, even if your assets are going up, it's what your costs are. And so what the Affordable Care Act did is that it made it more affordable to have good health care, because they had things like they said insurance companies could not reject any person because of pre-existing conditions. You could keep your child on your family health plan until age 26. It covered things like maternity care. And so there are a lot of things that made it easier, made it more affordable for health care. And so when you take away the consumer rights, where you have an age tax, where the same plan that you had under the Affordable Care Act, under the new proposal, your health costs for your premiums could go up by 758%. That is just plain wrong. I mean, people should have Affordable Care Act. And so even though your money goes up, if your health cost goes up, you could actually have less money than before. And that's why we're really monitoring this and pushing back hard. This is a very bad bill. Make no mistake.
I know AARP has been advocating very heavily. And without delving too deep into politics, I wonder, the two of you, if you could speak to, are you counting on Social Security? Are you counting on, any kind of medical assistance from the government? Or do you think that by the time you get there, you're totally on your own?
I don't know that I want to have hope that there will be there, but I think for my family, it was important that we know that we can take care of ourselves, and so preparing for that. And if we fall onto hard times and we need the safety net, we hope that it's around. But we also will contribute to that safety net in case we have to be there. But as far as our plans go, we're not counting on having to use it.
What about you? What do you think?
I would agree with what Keopu said. I kind of take the naive millennial approach, and I'm just going to hope it's going to be there when the time comes that I need it. But I also, my biggest asset is my family. So I'm hoping, as much as I've invested into them, they'll take care of me when I'm at that point.
I just want to point out to the two millennials here that Social Security is not going to go away, because even if you have Social Security right now is solvent, and even when you get to 2034, you just reduce the amount that the beneficiary is entitled to by about 25%. So the amount coming in has to pay for the amount going out. And since you can see the reduction in the incoming amount, you can see that if nothing is done, there'll be a 25% decrease, but it will still be there. And so there will be Social Security. We just have to make sure we're very vigilant. We have to make sure that there aren't proposals that will weaken it, because Social Security has sometimes been the only thing that has lifted people out of poverty in the state of Hawaii.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Vernon, this is a question for you. Sure. Do you know of any state initiatives set up for millennials, or are they just expected to learn all the money matters from family or school?
Well, I think we need to do a lot more education. I'm not sure if there's anything in the state, but I certainly think employers can take some initiative for that, because the millennials is such an important part of our workforce. And all these issues that we've been talking about this evening are really important, and they're very concerning. And, for example, at my employer, the bank, we do a lot of educational sessions for employees just to set them on the right track. It's almost like, you work so hard, and everyone's working so hard and taking care of their customers, taking care of others. Sometimes they fail to spend the time looking, the old saying, the shoemaker's kids, no more shoes, right? It's because everyone's just so hard working with the family and everything. But financial education, financial literacy, as you said, I think is very important. And I'm not sure if the state has something, but I think certainly employers could take that on as well.
You know, I want to, because we're getting closer to the end, but going back to that first idea of having to work 7 years longer or save twice as much, how many of your clients are millennials? I mean, how many folks are actually coming to you and dealing with wealth management?
Well, I tell you, we wish there were more. We many times we deal with their parents, but I tell you what, there's a big trend is maybe the baby boomer generation, we're going to retire soon. And there's going to be a lot of transition of wealth. The millennials one day is going to have all the money because, because they're going to be the successors or the beneficiaries of some wealth. So it's really important, I think, that we get more millennials involved with this. I think technology, many millennials have so many online offerings and so forth. But I think an advisor or someone who really knows the family, who knows their risk personality, their health issues, if they have to take care of parents, all these issues, it's hard to have an online service provide advice on that. So I think the role of the advisor is really important for those situations. So we highly encourage more millennials to think about that. Yeah. When
you think about retirement, how do you feel?
I quite honestly sometimes don't think I'll ever retire. I mean, and I was thinking about the statistic of working 7 years longer. I don't think of working 7 years longer because I have to, right? It's because if I'm doing what I love, why would I stop doing it? And I think what's resonating a lot was that, my father died fairly young in his 50s. And it was because my parents had set up things like life insurance, they had pensions set up, they had all of these things, all these kinds of savings accounts saved up that my mom's okay financially, we will be okay, and I think that was a priority. So even if we're not saving as much toward 401ks, we've set up, how do we make sure that our children are set? So our son, if something happens to us when we're young, he's able to be taken care of. So even if it's not this kinds of saving, it's how do we be realistic on transferring that wealth for our children, because it will be transferred to us. So, but as far as retirement goes, I don't want to stop working. I enjoy what I do.
Well, Koi, you're only 25, so retirement's probably a long ways off. But do you think about that? Do you think that, I mean, obviously, if you're saving 70%, we're not too worried about you.
Yeah, I do think about it. I try not to worry about it, but I do, I'm aware of my retirement. I haven't projected when it's going to happen, but a major part of my life is investing. So I guess my definition of retirement is not working for someone else and being able to be my own boss. So I mean, for some people that is not the definition of retirement is golfing all day and having no responsibilities. But that's, I guess, my most foreseeable definition of retirement.
Barbara, how do you think that this is all going to change? I mean, your organization will adapt as these folks age. Do you think retirement for millennials will look different?
It will, and here's the reason why. People are living longer. A 10-year-old today has a 50% chance of living to be 104. Now, when Social Security was created 59 years ago, you retired. They looked at the retirement age of 62, and then you died at 67. And here you're talking about all the way to 104. And we have news for people that this is not far-fetched to know that that there are people who are already alive, already born, will age to 150.
150?
Yes. And so if you retire at 62 or 67,
really good.
that is why we're so concerned about having enough money so that it doesn't run out before, that doesn't run out before you do. That you will have to have money. And so I wish there were more financial education classes. I think everybody would benefit. But I do think that people have to look at the aging process differently. And we'd like to invite everybody to the Disrupt Aging keynote by our CEO, Joanne Jenkins, this Saturday, May 6th at 11:30 at the Mission Memorial Auditorium, because it is just a groundbreaking way of looking at how you're going to look at your life.
150, I mean, that kind
I
of
know.
boggles the mind. You know, I thought I only had to save till I was maybe 80.
No, we lived the longest in Hawaii, and so you're thinking we probably lived to 160. So we just want to make sure that people in Hawaii have what they need in order to live the best life possible, and that's what ARP works on every single day.
Wow, 150.
I know.
All right.
Health.
That's a lot to think about. We thank all of you for being with us tonight. Mahalo to you for joining us. We thank our guests, of course, Makoa Santorini, Barbara Kim Stanton, the Hawaii State Director of the American Association of Retired Persons, Keopu Relitz, and Vernon Wong, Wealth Manager at First Hawaiian Bank. We're sure he's going to get a lot of calls from millennials next week. And next week on Insights, our state senators and House representatives have wrapped up the 2017 legislative session. We know they left some work undone. Two leaders from the House and Senate will sit down with two reporters who followed all of the hearings and the testimony very closely. Each will grade this session on the progress made with key issues other than rail and important legislation that passed and that didn't. See if you agree. The grades are in. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Until next time, a hui hou.